Welcome to the DLN channel. Thank you for joining us as we continue to fly through African American history with the Tuskegee Airmen. Today we are honored and privileged to have a special guest with us today. We have Corporal Wilbert Gore Senior. Welcome to the studio.
Okay.
All right, and connected live with us, we have students from Meek Elementary School in Alabama. So welcome, Meek Elementary. We also have students from Gloucester City Public Schools in New Jersey, so welcome, Gloucester.
Hi, class will be here in a few minutes, so I'm just standing in for them.
All right, and we have some students at Natchitoches Magnet School. Welcome, Natchitoches. And we should have students from Northeast Nottoway in Missouri. So welcome, Northeast Nottoway. All right, now for our virtual audience, we want to thank you too for tuning in to the DLN channel. You too can interact with Corporal Gore by emailing your questions into dlinfochannel@gmail.com. And we'll try to get those questions answered during the live broadcast. All right, so let's get started. Corporal Gore. All right, so how would you define Tuskegee Airmen?
How would I define Tuskegee Airmen?
Yes, how would you define that group?
Well,
Who were they?
Who were they?
Mm-hmm.
It was, I can only speak for myself now. I was transferred to the Tuskegee Air Group in 1944. And that's where I got the job. I went to school in California for the job. And my MOS that's what my job called for. They had a plane that they needed a flight engineer on. So that's where I got the job. I was a mechanic, I was a crew chief, and then I got promoted to the flight engineer. Okay.
Okay. So what was your role as a part of the Tuskegee group or Tuskegee Airmen?
Well, I was a flight engineer. We had two transport planes, and we had to get equipment go to all over the East Coast to get different parts for planes. You know, that was hold up because of they didn't have a shortage of material. So that was most of what we did up and down the East Coast, especially in Lockbourne, and sometimes it was up in Michigan. Wherever whatever they needed, we would get it to keep this B-25s running.
Okay. So so you serviced or you were part of the ensuring that the B-25 was...
They had just got the B-25s when I joined. But they had one C-47, which is transport, but the B-25, that's a medium bomber. And they was getting ready to go to the Pacific, but the war was over before the war was in Japan on VJ Day, and they let everything go because, it's too expensive to try to get to the Pacific at that time, but the war was over.
Okay, and you're talking about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
No, that was the beginning.
Right, okay.
That was the beginning of the war. This was the ending of the war. When they dropped them bombs in Nagasaki, Iwo Jima, that was the end of the war. Ships surrendered, that was it. That was the end of World War II.
Okay, yeah, because the United States, they tried to remain neutral. They supported their allies all the way up until that point where there were bombs dropped in the Pearl Harbor. What were you doing at that time? Were you already involved in the military at that time, or?
No, I wasn't at that time. I wasn't drafted at that time. I wasn't in the military. That's when they bombed Pearl Harbor.
Okay.
I was in the civilian conservation. I was in the CCC camp at that time, the 7th December 1941. I was in the CC camp, but I was stationed at Fort Bragg, one of the biggest bases it was in the country at that time. Had more soldiers. And I went from there. I was drafted in regular Army.
Okay, okay. So you were drafted in the Army, and then you went on to, you went to which base after you were drafted?
After I was drafted, went to basic training in Biloxi, Mississippi. Then I went to 6th Ferrying Command in California. Went to school in the Ferrying Command, and then that's when they needed people at the Tuskegee Airmen, Colonel Davis' outfit, when he got Godman Field, and my job description called for that job, so they shipped me there.
So did you always want to be a flight engineer? How did you get into that field?
I didn't. I wanted to do a good job to what I did, and I went to school in California. I was in the 6th Ferrying Command. It trained us how to ditch a plane and how you get out and survive and all that stuff. So my MOS, my job description called for that, and they needed some in the Tuskegee Airmen, and that's why they shipped me from California 6th Ferrying Command to Godman Field, Kentucky.
Okay, all right. Okay, so how did you overcome segregation and prejudice while serving as a flight engineer?
Yeah. Well, I never had too much as a flight engineer. Well, everybody in that outfit was in Colonel Davis' outfit. Everybody was black. See, before then, when Colonel Davis took over the Godman Field, they didn't have no white there. They had, everybody was black because there was Tuskegee. They had been overseas with 99, 332nd. They was back in the States, and that's when they gave him his own command. He was a colonel at that time, and he got Godman Field, Kentucky. And that's when I joined the outfit, because I was in the Ferrying Command in California.
Okay, so would you say it would be safe to say that you didn't really have to experience segregation directly?
Well, it was all over. Everywhere you was, it was segregated. I mean, you can ride in the bus, you could go, I'd go to work when I was in California, I'd go to work on aircraft, and whenever get ready to go to lunch or dinner, you go one way, the white went the other way. I mean, that was segregation. And the highest ranking person in the outfit was a master sergeant. When you got to your CO, everybody was white. The two people had usually a major or a captain, something like that. But his highest person I saw, with my basic and everything, was a master sergeant.
Okay. So in the military, when you were at work, you worked with African Americans, but as soon as you left that arena, you were back into a segregated.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure. Well, just like anything, like riding a bus, train, or anything like that, see?
Okay, so how did you overcome or feel when you were fighting in World War II, or you're fighting for the belief in ending fascism, which may be considered by some as a more extreme version of racism. You're fighting for that in other countries, you're fighting against that, but you're experiencing it at home.
Well, it's bad to go somewhere to fight somebody else when you're trying to fight at home too. So, see, your morale ain't there sometimes. You sit down and think about it. I don't know how to explain it, but you can't do two things. You can't be good and bad at the same time. You got to have a neutral ground somewhere.
Okay.
So I'd been in all my life from the time I started school until I got grown. Everything where I was born and raised in North Carolina, and that's like the white went to school 8 months, the colored went to school. They didn't use the word black then. Colored went to school 6 months. So how can you compete with somebody with somebody got a college education and you got a 10th grade. It's hard to do.
Okay.
So,
Did that push you to even want to be better? Was that a driving force? Was that a challenge that you said, I'm going to overcome this by being the best flight engineer that I can possibly be?
yeah, I had to think like that. Because when I went to school, the principal told me one time, said, some people say don't bite off no more than you can chew. Said, but you being who you are, I reckon he didn't say black or something like that. Said you got to bite off more than you can chew and chew it. Said it sounds funny, but you being black, you got to bite off more than you can chew and chew it.
Okay.
So you get to the top of the ladder, where you got to go? Ain't nowhere to go but down. So you seen people you meet going up, you meet them coming back down. See,
Okay.
so I just get a lot of. I had pretty good parents. I got a little mother with, and I ain't forgot.
Okay. So would you say your parents were a contributing factor to your successes as a
Well,
flight engineer?
My mother was. My father died when I was 5 years old, so my mother raised 6 of us, and one left.
Okay. Any other engineers?
Huh?
Any other engineers in the family?
No. I had one brother, and he passed about 10, 15 years ago, so his family's small. Nobody in the military but me, from my family.
Okay. Okay. So what should students know about the Tuskegee Airmen? Because they're starting to study it. Some of them are restudying and relearning about the Tuskegee Airmen. What do you want them to know?
I want them to know, just don't step on nobody on the way up. You meet the same people when you're coming back down. Just be true to yourself, and that's all you got to do. So what would I do if I was on the others, if it was switched around?
Okay.
That's about the best I can say.
Okay. Did you ever see in the field the P-51? Did you ever want to service that one? That's one of the more famous ones that
Yeah.
everybody can identify with during World War II. They get the name of the Red Tail Angels. Did you ever encounter that as an engineer?
No, I wasn't in that. They had them when it was overseas, but I don't know where to train in the States for it. But I never had any contact with the P-51, but I know it was the best plane they had for combat, what it was doing for. It was the people over there that wanted them to escort them when the bombers wanted red tails. That's the way they identified them when they got up there and they needed to fight off somebody. They called the red tails because they had the best record of any other fighter group.
And their job was to, because the students may not know exactly what the job of the pilots that were flying these Red Tails, what was their job during the war? What was their task?
Well, they were just to escort the bombers. That's what they was. The fighter group, I think somewhere along the line they sunk a ship or something like that. He did more than just escort the bombers, but that was a major job. Escort the bombers when they on a bomber mission. The Red Tails the bomber pilots. They'd ask for the Red Tails because it had such a good record and a good pilots.
Okay.
So that's
And good engineers to support those. good
Oh yeah,
pilots.
they had to have people on. Anytime you see a plane in the air, about 4 or 5 people help to get it there.
Right.
So the pilot they wasn't a mechanic, but they had to know the plane. If they go up and something went wrong, they come back and report it to the crew chief, and that had to be straightened for to go on another flight. So that's where the crew chief come in.
Okay. Did you ever, were you ever a co-pilot with?
No. I didn't train for co-pilot.
Okay.
No pilot training. I was on flying status as an engineer, just well, say a mechanic going with the vehicle. Yes, something happened to it. It's my job to fix it.
Okay.
Keep it, have fuel, pre-flight it, have it ready to move at any time they want it.
Okay. And so the work of the engineers helped to pioneer those red tails to be so successful. One of the things that they document in history is how many lives they saved when they escorted those bombers. You know, they were being shot down in record numbers prior to the red tails.
So, yeah, the Red Tails had a good record, and they would request them to escort them if he was on a bomber mission. So they had a good record of that.
Okay. All right. Now, the Red Tails movie, talking about the Red Tails, there's a movie, and it's playing in theaters right now. What can students and teachers learn about the Red Tails if they go view this movie?
Well, actually, the best thing I know would be cooperation. You know, getting together. One, don't try to get ahead of the other. You got to be together. Or you can't, you do this, you do that, you better this, you better that. Just get everything together and work as one.
Okay, so teamwork is essential.
That's right.
Okay, and so they should see this kind of teamwork in the movie, and that should kind of support them into working more as a team. Everybody in the team has a role to play.
That's right. You got a job to do. Everybody got a, in the role, in the team, got a job to do. That's the best way I can explain it.
Oh, that's a good explanation. Do you have any words of encouragement or advice? Because you becoming a flight engineer, you had to take certain steps, right? What steps did you have to take? And
Well, one way I got a little discouraged when I was in California, in the ferrying command, they would leave planes from California. They go to Hickman Field, Hawaii, stop overnight and refuel and go to London, England. There was 5 blacks in the group in the training, and we wanted to know why we couldn't get that flight sometime. They said because the planes stop overnight in Hawaii, and they don't have no facilities at that base for blacks. I said, well, we can stay on the plane. Sometimes you have to work on them all night. They say, well, they don't have no place. That's the reason you can't go to London, England, because when they stop overnight at Hickman Field, Hawaii, and there are no facilities for black. So that was the end of that.
okay. All right, I want to give some of the students a chance to ask questions, and then we can go back with our question segment.
Okay.
So I would like to give Meek Elementary a chance to ask about 2 or 3 questions. So Meek Elementary School, if you have some questions, if you can stand up and speak into the microphone.
Katie? Talk loud. Stand right there and talk.
I'm sorry, Katie, we can't hear your question.
Was it difficult to live during segregation?
Was it difficult to live during segregation? Was it difficult to live during that time?
Difficult to live.
Mm-hmm.
Difficult to live. I don't
Like,
understand.
was it, did you have to go through a lot of hardship living through segregation? Were you denied a lot of things? Restricted from doing some of the things that you wanted to do during those times?
Well, to a certain extent it was. But mostly, by me growing up in the South, I know about what my limit was, to what I wanted to do. I mostly know the things I could do and could not do. I went to segregated schools and everywhere else like that, but some things I'd like to do, just like riding a school bus to school. The white pick them up every morning. I got to walk in the mud to school. Never went to a school with a cafeteria in it and something like that. So, I mean, it was a lot to see there, but you just have to grin and bear it.
Okay, so it was difficult, but it was something that you just had to persevere through because that was just how it was.
Yes, that's how it was.
Okay. All right, good question, Katie. Any other questions for Meek Elementary School?
How many planes were on the team?
How many planes were on the
Team.
team?
Red Tail.
Okay, so do you know how many planes flew during the Red Tails, the 332nd Squadron? Okay.
I wouldn't know that.
Okay, do you know how many planes were in your group?
No, I wasn't in a squadron with a certain amount of planes.
Okay.
I covered, as a flight engineer, I covered more than one plane, but we didn't have a certain amount of planes that I had to take care of. I had to take care of the one that I had was responsible for to keep the record of. So I was a crew chief and all that, but I couldn't tell how many planes it was.
Okay. I believe I heard one of the Tuskegee Airmen reference that it started about 19,000 African American pilots during that 332nd Squadron that flew the Red Tail Angels. That doesn't say exactly how many P-51 planes there were, but somewhere around there that there was like 19,000.
Because I didn't go overseas, so I couldn't know the planes was, flying overseas, Italy and places like that, flying from. But I didn't go overseas, so I couldn't see.
Right.
I couldn't see.
So there were certain groups, there were certain squadrons, and what was unique about that 332nd Squadron, it was actually like a combination of different squadrons that came together to service that
That's right.
the bombing group.
Yeah.
All right.
Right.
All right. Let's take about 2 questions from Gloucester. Gloucester, are you ready to ask questions?
Yeah.
Hello from New Jersey.
Oh, God.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes, we can.
All right. I was wondering, as an engineer, and of course, I'm pretty sure you've seen damage from battle as you're repairing things. Do you ever wish that instead of being behind the scenes, you'd actually be in the action itself?
Okay, so as an engineer, you're more behind the scenes. Do you ever wish that you were in more of the direct contact in front of, or where the action was, where the so-called action was?
I would have liked to have been a pilot.
Okay.
I would have liked to have been a pilot.
Okay.
But most of the people who went through, flight school at Tuskegee, most of them was college graduates. And so that's one thing. I didn't have enough. Well, you had to be a college graduate to get in flight school. So that's sort of what I would like to have been a pilot.
Okay, so in order to become a pilot, you had to already have graduated to get even accepted into that school.
Right.
All right, so
Flight school.
okay, so you already had a bachelor's when you got accepted to be a pilot. What type of education did you have to have in order to be a flight engineer?
Well, I finished. I didn't finish like the year from finishing high school, but I had enough to pass the test for flight engineer.
Okay.
So I was in the Ferry Command in California, and I went to school to give you an aptitude test in basic and see where they wanted to send you. And whatever grades you come out with, then they'd place you where the
Okay.
best place you could be.
Okay.
Get the most service from you.
Okay, so for the students out there, it's probably something like the ASVAB test, where you take the ASVAB test if you have an interest in serving in the military, and that ranking kind of guides you toward a career that you can take when you go into the armed forces. So something like that,
Yeah,
they
something
kind
like
of. All right, another question from Gloucester.
Yeah. If any, how much experience did you have like, as a pilot before you were put in your unit?
Okay, before you started servicing on the C-47s, and what experience did you have, or did you have any experience prior to that?
Yeah, I went to school in California for that job. I was a flight engineer I flew some on a B-17, just shooting landings, as a flight engineer and refueling and stuff like that. But actually, I had the experience to do what I did when I had my MOS as a flight engineer. I had that when they shipped me to Keystone Field in Mississippi.
Okay.
I mean, one Keystone Field, that's a basic training. I got to make some basic training in Keystone Field, Mississippi. But I'm doing Lockbourne with Colonel Davis
Okay.
when they come back from overseas. That's when I went there because I was in California in the Ferrying Command. By me going to school there for the flight engineer, MOS, my job went to Colonel Davis because they had those C-47s and the B-25.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. And we want to see, is Nottaway online and would they like to ask questions? All right. So we'll open it up for NACADES. Magnet?
Yes, ma'am, we're here.
Okay. We'll take some questions from your students.
Okay. Anybody have a question? Brooklyn? Stand up and
What is your medal for that you're wearing?
Oh, Brooklyn is seeing your medals on your jacket, on your lapel. She wants to know what your medals are for.
Okay, that's a good conduct, World War II Victory Medal, and that is American Theater. That's good conduct. This is Crew Chief Wings, and this has an expert rifleman medal for that. This one up here, that's what they call a ruptured duck.
A ruptured duck?
That's something you don't hear from, but they issued that to the World War II people, some of them.
Okay, so they got a,
That's something you don't see very often. In World War II, that's what they call a ruptured duck. And quite naturally, that's America.
All right, good question. Oh, and one on your top, on your,
Oh,
yeah.
this, yeah. Read that last paragraph in that.
Okay.
See, the
Oh, so
president,
after war, about the president?
yes.
Okay, so on March 29, 2007, President George W. Bush conferred the Congressional Gold Medal on all Tuskegee Airmen who participated in the Tuskegee Airmen experiment.
Yes.
And that's the medal.
That's the medal.
That's the
got the-
Congressional Medal.
Got the people on one side, planes, P-51 on the other.
Okay. All right. It's good. Now, Destiny? I'm sorry, was that Destiny?
Destin.
Destin.
Okay. Ethan?
How many different places did you get to go to?
Oh, how many different places did you get to go through? Did you travel all over the U.S.?
No,
Not quite.
no, mostly on the East Coast. Well, I took training on the West Coast, but
Okay.
when I come back, everything was on the East Coast.
Okay.
And I went to Garden Field and Lockbourne and places like that. Most of them on the East Coast.
Okay. So mostly on the East Coast, which is good because that's where you're born on the
Yeah.
East Coast. You're born from North Carolina, but had to go to the West Coast to California for training. So,
Yeah,
okay.
after basic, I went to California in 6th Ferrying Command, went to school, an aircraft school, for aircraft school for crew chief and all that.
So I hope the kids are hearing how much school you're referring to, that you went to different places, different training programs, so it was constant learning
Yeah, oh yeah.
during that time.
Never stop learning. You can't learn too much. can learn too less, but not too much.
Okay, so you never stopped learning. So you had to constantly learn as the, situation of World War II was
Yeah,
changing.
because everything changed. Every day, something new.
Okay. All right, and one more question from Nakadesh.
Okay, just a minute. Before, I have a question.
Sure.
You talked a lot about your experiences going to school through segregation and how you had to walk in the mud, etc., to get there. How do you feel about the kids today who have the luxury of a free education and they don't want to go to school? What would you say to those kids that take for granted, I should say,
Right.
the opportunity that you guys have worked so hard for?
Go get all the education you can get. You can't get too much. That's the room that's never been full. Room for improvement. To get all you can get while you can get it.
Right. Yeah,
Never get
and if
too
I can
much.
add to that, Corporal Gore, is that their privileges that they have now has not come without the sacrifice from someone else. So, and just talking with Corporal Gore and tuning in this month and speaking with all the Tuskegee Airmen, there were a lot of trials and tribulations during these times, and they overcame them. And it's those accomplishments that we kind of piggyback on now. So, we take for granted that, but just remember your luxuries were the expense of someone else. So like you said, Corporal Gore, there's no such thing as too much education.
No, can't take too much. Too less.
All right. I'm going to go
Thank you.
to, you're welcome. Thank you for that question.
We have one more question. That was a teacher question from
Okay.
Natchitoches. Chantrice?
How many injuries did you get? Did you get any injuries in the military?
Did you get any injuries?
No.
No injuries?
No,
Okay.
didn't.
I was very fortunate. No injuries
No.
over here.
No. No.
Thank you.
Nothing.
All right. And one of the, I recall one of the questions last week was how imminent was danger when you were in World War II, and I remember the Tuskegee Airmen saying, well, I wasn't like right in the middle of battle, but there's dangers all around because, one, even if I wasn't overseas, I was still in a segregated America, and so, there was those dangers there.
That's
So,
right.
yeah, you don't have to necessarily be on the front line in order to experience some of the dangers and hardships.
Oh, yeah, you had the battle back here.
So there were two battles going on,
Yeah,
World War
two.
II, and then there was the battle against segregation and
That's
racism
right.
here.
Even when you got out, it's still going on.
Right. Okay. I'm going to go to the email and take some questions. We have a question from Kayla at Verina High School in Richmond, Virginia. What types of math courses does a flight engineer have to have? Did you have to take any math?
Math, you have to have a little bit of, you ain't got to be a professor in it, but you got to have some, you got to be able to take orders and read and figure out something for yourself. Somebody tell you to go out there and pre-fly the plane, you got to get the logbook and see what you're supposed to do to it, to pre-fly it. You got to know what type of gasoline to put in it. Check your oil.
Right.
Get your compass together.
Okay.
There's a lot of things. You're responsible for the whole plane. You got to have a little bit of, the know-how.
Okay, so a little bit of everything, especially some math.
Yeah,
There was a lot of,
math. Yeah, you got to figure out a lot of things there, like how much gas and how many miles. Depends upon where you're going. You've got to stop along the way to refuel, something like that. You know how many miles. How far 100 gallons of gas will take you. If it wasn't enough, you had to figure out a flight that would stop to get some more gas, something like that.
okay. Which kind of triumphed the P-51 because they were able to go longer distance.
Oh yeah, they go faster, so much money. But I flew on a C-47. See, that thing was slow, and they have to have oxygen. We didn't have oxygen masks because under 10,000 feet you don't need oxygen.
Okay.
But you go over 10,000, we'd have to have oxygen, but we didn't go that far. They go that far up.
Okay.
So there's a lot of things about it. A lot of them I forgot.
Okay.
You're talking about 66 or some years ago.
Okay, okay. But still that math is there. So Kayla and Richmond study that math. All right, and then we have Joshua from Smithville High School in Virginia. Were there lots of flight engineers? I
No.
guess African American engineers?
No.
No, no.
No, I think there's three of us at Lockmore, and I didn't come in contact with no other ones. See, B-25, they had a crew of about 6 people, but they had to have a bombardier, an electrician, radio man, and pilot and co-pilot. They had a crew of about 5 or 6. So that made a difference right there.
Okay,
They had their own radio man. See, sometime I had to use the radio in the C-47. If the pilot, co-pilot was busy doing something else, so, we coming in for landing, something like that.
okay. And I'll do one more from the web, and then I'll take it back to some of the students out there. Did you study engineering before joining the Tuskegee Airmen or after? This is from Nicole out in Clarksburg, Maryland.
Yes, I had some training when I was 6th Fairing Command in California before I got into Tuskegee Airmen.
Okay, and it was the draft that put you there.
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh.
okay. All right. Meek Elementary, I want to give you an opportunity. We can cycle back through and give a couple more questions per school, and then we probably be out of time.
Thanks. Were there ranks in engineering like there was for the men who were on the ground fighting?
Okay, were there ranks? Is that your question?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, were there ranks? Engineering have ranks, because I think I heard you mention that there was the crew chief, and so was there a ranking system?
Well, there wasn't no particular rating you had to have, as long as you did the job, because I got promoted one time, and I kept the promotion 13 days before the revoked order, because I had too much rank in the outfit for the same job. So that was just a matter of where you was at the time.
Okay, so each group had to have a certain amount of ranking.
Yeah.
Distributed.
You couldn't have too much rank. And you ain't got but 3 people. You couldn't have them all be first sergeants. You had to, it's spread it among the people, the amount of people you had.
Right, that makes sense. Okay, good question, Meek Elementary. All right.
Susanna.
Did you ever get to work or fly with one of the bombing planes?
I'm sorry, Susanna, could you ask that one more time?
Did you ever get to work with one of the bombing planes?
Okay, did you ever get to work with one of the bombing planes?
No.
No, not the bombing plane. Not the bombing planes, Susanna. Okay. All right, and one more question from Meek Elementary.
Steve. I don't know that he did. Did you kill anyone during World War II?
Did you kill anyone during World War II?
No.
No, he didn't have to do that.
No.
No, not during World War II. But he did facilitate, he did help that to happen. As the flight engineer, those planes couldn't have got off the ground if it wasn't for the flight engineers that would take down some of those other German planes.
That's right.
So it was a support system. Okay, I want to go to Gloucester and give them an opportunity to ask some final questions.
Did you keep any of the relationships with anybody that you made during the war after the war?
Oh, did you keep any of the relationships with the people that you met during the war? Do you?
Oh yeah, I'll still keep in touch with some of them.
Okay.
Yeah, but most of the guys is more of them dead than is living.
Okay.
So that's been a good while ago.
Yeah.
See.
Yeah, I think that's what the Sergeant Quentin was saying last week is
Yeah.
that, there was 19,000 and it's a little over 200 now.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
the numbers are going
Yeah,
down.
because everybody's in the 80s and 90s. It was in World War II. See,
Okay, so we're talking about a war in the 40s.
yeah, because I made 8 myself, so
Okay.
so I know.
Well, happy 88.
Yeah, yeah, I've been around a little while.
Okay, well, it's some good
Aye.
experience, and thank you for sharing it with us today.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for tuning in to the DL Info channel as we fly through African American history with the Tuskegee Airmen. Thank you again for all of your comments and great questions. You have a good day. Goodbye.